This movie begins by showing a boy named Sombat Bonchamek, or more commonly known as Thongdee. At a very young age, Thongdee lived a rough and challenging life. One of the problems he has to face every day is the bullying of the other children to him. Due to the large number of children targeting Thongdee, he had no other choice but to run away from them. But even though he had tried to run away, the children still chased and attacked him relentlessly. Even the children often threw stones at Thongdee until he suffered injuries all over his body. That day, Thongdee ran from the other children and tried to hide in a market. At the end of the market, he saw a group of young men and men practicing martial arts. Thongdee also approached and asked the teacher for help teaching him self-defense so he could become stronger. The thing that motivates Thongdee the most to learn self-defense is his desire to be able to defend himself when facing attacks from children who always bully him. Unfortunately, even though the teacher knew that Thongdee had good intentions to study, he could not accept him as his student. The trainer explained that in their village, small child is not allowed to practice self-defense because they don't want the children to abuse their martial arts knowledge for something bad. Moreover, the teacher would only accept teenage boys or youths as students at his college. Shortly after, Thongdee's father came and asked Thongdee to immediately leave the location of the martial arts college. His father doesn't seem to want Thongdee to learn self-defense or get involved in any activity that could put him in danger. Even his father had brought Thongdee to a monk so that the monk would advise Thongdee about the dangers of martial arts. Thongdee's father, who is known to be very obedient to Buddhist teachings, is also very against martial arts because he thinks that self-defense is the same as violence. But instead of helping Thongdee's father by warning Thongdee, the monk allowed him to learn martial arts as long as he did it for self-defense and not violence. The next day when Thongdee was playing around the temple, some village children again attacked him by throwing stones at him. Among the children, there is a boy named Cherd, who is the only child of a nobleman who is quite wealthy and most influential in the village. Thongdee began to feel disgusted by the treatment of Cherd and the other children, so he tried to learn self-defense with simple equipment that he made himself. Thongdee not only has a high fighting spirit, but also an extraordinary talent in martial arts. This can be proven when he managed to beat other children, even though he only practiced for one day. Since that incident, Thongdee has continued to train his physical strength and hone his skills so that he can become a powerful fighter. When Thongdee was a teenager, he was again targeted by the Cherd group because they wanted revenge for what Thongdee did to them a few years ago. But even though they came with horses and sharp weapons, Thongdee was still able to defeat them one by one after he led them into the forest. Cherd went home upset and went straight to his father to report what Thongdee had done. Unfortunately, after Cherd's father found out that Cherd intended to attack Thongdee, his father turned to scold him because Thongdee was one of the mercenaries in their village who could make a lot of money for him. Cherd's father, who is annoyed, warns Cherd not to bother Thongdee again or he will kick him out of his house. Since Thongdee's abilities and strengths were recognized by the villagers, Thongdee was often paid to fight against fighters from other villages or colleges. Every time he won a fight, Thongdee's teacher and Cherd's father, who had bet on his victory, would get a bigger payoff. Not only Thongdee, male students from colleges in their village are also often the object of bets even though they have to sacrifice their own lives. However, unlike other students, Thongdee is known as a strong fighter who is invincible with the greatest chance of winning, so he is often considered a money-making machine. Unfortunately, all that changed when one day Thongdee was defeated by a great fighter named Kru Hao, who came from another village. Kru Hao was able to make Thongdee cornered and overwhelmed, until finally he fell unconscious. The teacher and other students were disappointed with Thongdee and chose to leave him alone by the river. Shortly after, a young man who was drunk on alcohol helped Thongdee and pulled him to the riverbank. When Thongdee woke up, he immediately asked the man where his teacher and other students were. The man explained that they had all dumped him because he couldn't make any more money. Thongdee felt very disappointed with his teacher who had left him just because of money. The man then told him that all the attacks Thongdee had previously performed were too weak and had no special techniques at all. The man suggested that Thongdee travel to various places and start learning real martial arts because he felt that the martial arts taught in the village were false arts. Thongdee obeyed those words and began to travel to find a better martial arts college. After walking quite a distance, he finally arrived at a martial arts college in a village and immediately started training there. When the teacher at the college noticed Thongdee's sudden arrival, the teacher immediately asked about his identity and the purpose of coming to the place. Thongdee revealed that he purposely traveled to various martial arts colleges to learn various martial arts techniques. Hearing this, the teacher allowed him to participate in martial arts training in that place with other fighters. The teacher seemed impressed with Thongdee's physical strength and fighting ability because within a few days, Thongdee had been able to defeat many fighters from that college. Therefore, the teacher appreciated Thongdee by teaching him a special technique that he could use to defeat his opponent more easily. One day, when one of Cherd's men was buying some food in the village, he saw Thongdee who was practicing martial arts in that place. The young man immediately rushed to meet Cherd to report it to him, so that the next day, Cherd and his troops immediately came to the college. Cherd threatens teachers from the college to hand over Thongdee. If they refuse, he and his troops will burn down all the houses in the village. The teacher also felt angry and annoyed with the threats because Cherd had insulted the dignity of his college. One of Cherd's bodyguards starts arguing with the teacher and even intends to kidnap the teacher's daughter. Before the situation escalated, Thongdee decided to surrender himself so that Cherd would not create trouble in the village. Cherd began to tie Thongdee's hands and drag him using the horse he was riding so that Thongdee could only surrender without putting up any resistance. But when Cherd's men began to burn the houses belonging to residents in the village, Thongdee could not let that happen, so he immediately untied Cherd's horse and immediately attacked him. After defeating Cherd with one attack, Thongdee rushed to help the residents defeat the bad guys until they were taken down. Cherd could only accept his defeat for the umpteenth time and immediately ran away from that place. After all the fires were contained and the situation returned to normal, Thongdee decided to say goodbye to the teachers and students at the college. Thongdee realized that if he stayed longer at the college, the entire population would be in danger, so he would have to continue his journey elsewhere. Meanwhile, Cherd's father is busy scolding Cherd because he failed to bring Thongdee back, which makes Cherd's father lose his best-paid fighter. Cherd and his men also intend to beat up the people who had previously helped Thongdee escape. The two of them even intended to kidnap the other villagers into the forest and kill them one by one. On the other hand, while Thongdee was walking through the forest, a young man named Boonkoth quietly followed Thongdee from behind. It turned out that Boonkoth intended to join Thongdee's journey because he was very interested in learning martial arts with him. The next day, Thongdee and Boonkoth arrived at a stage for an art performance held in a village. Boonkoth also approached a girl manager named Ling Ling and asked if she was in need of additional workers. Ling Ling also introduced Thongdee and Boonkoth to her father and informed him that the two travelers were in need of work. At first, her father refused to accept them as workers because the profits from performing arts were running low lately. But after learning that Thongdee and Boonkoth were willing to pay a small fee, her father allowed them both to join the show tonight. The two also worked as show actors for one night so they could earn some money for food. The next morning when Boonkoth woke up from his sleep, he found that Thongdee had already left for the forest. At the same time, Cherd and his troops began to carry out their plan to terrorize the residents and attack them one by one. They even had time to attack a horse carriage that was ridden by a girl named Lim Young. Fortunately, Thongdee happened to pass through the forest, so he immediately helped her and fought against Cherd's troops. After successfully defeating them and rescuing Lim Young, Thongdee intends to go on his way to another village. But before that, Lim Young gave a gold ring and a horse carriage as a thank you to Thongdee for saving her. A few moments later, Thongdee arrived at a village and immediately asked about self-education in that village. After learning that the martial arts college in the village was one of the best in the western region, he immediately went to see the martial arts teacher so he would be allowed to study there. After seeing Thongdee's ability, the teacher accepted Thongdee as his student and immediately brought him together with Boonkoth, who had already arrived in the village. Thongdee also began to conduct intensive training under the direction of his second teacher so that his abilities could improve faster. A few days later, the teacher realized Thongdee's potential and offered him to take part in the Intercollegiate fighting competition. Thongdee also trains hard every day to win the fighting competition and give pride to the college that houses him. On the day the fighting competition was about to be held, Thongdee again met Ling Ling and Lim Young, who happened to be traveling in the village. As the battle was about to begin, leaders from other schools seemed to underestimate Thongdee's teacher and his college. But in the end, Thongdee managed to turn things around and prove that his college was far superior to theirs. Even Thongdee managed to humiliate the enemy by defeating the best fighters and teachers from the college. After the competition was over, Thongdee said goodbye to the teacher and continued his journey to learn more other martial techniques. On this trip, Thongdee and Boonkoth will go with Ling Ling and another young man. In the third village, Thongdee and the others met an old man who liked to get drunk, but he was very good at using weapons. Thongdee and the others began to study with the old man by giving him a few bottles of alcohol as payment. They also train very hard every day to master the technique of using swords and other weapons. Long story short, after undergoing intensive training, Thongdee and the others managed to master the skill of using the sword and received a weapon as a gift from the man. While continuing their journey in the forest, Thongdee and the others were suddenly attacked by Cherd's troops, causing Boonkoth to suffer severe injuries. Fortunately, Thongdee was able to defeat and kill Cherd's men, although in the end, Cherd managed to escape. Thongdee and the others rushed to take Boonkoth to a healer in the opposite village so that he could be rescued immediately. Thongdee then thanked a man named Ruing for helping them find a healer. At that place, Thongdee accidentally met Lim Young, who turned out to be the daughter of Kruhao who had previously defeated him. Kruhao then invites Thongdee to take part in a fighting competition organized by the king in the coming days. He accepts the offer and begins to prepare to fight against the best fighters from other colleges. When the day of the competition between fighters arrived, Thongdee and Kru Hao managed to beat the other fighters quite easily. Until in the end, Thongdee had to face Kru Hao, which in that fight, the king risked a lot of money for Kru Hao's victory. Even though Kru Hao had previously defeated him, Thongdee was not afraid and kept trying to win the fight. With a variety of training and martial arts that he has learned so far, he was finally able to defeat Kru Hao in that duel fight. After the fight was over, the king seemed impressed with Thongdee's abilities because he had managed to defeat several of the king's mainstay fighters. When the king was about to give the prize to the winners, a group of troops suddenly entered the center of the arena and attacked the king. The troop was initiated by Ruing, who previously helped Thongdee find a healer to save Bunkoth. There was a brief fight between the king's troops and the troops from Ruing, but the fight was successfully stopped when Ruing revealed to everyone that he was the real king. It turned out that the king who had previously held a fighting competition was just a deceitful leader who wanted to earn a lot of money from fighting bets. Ruing also managed to reclaim the king's throne, which was previously controlled by the fake king, and began to appoint Thongdee as the royal warlord. The ending scene shows where Thongdee returns to his village with Lim Young to meet his mother, who has been waiting for him for a long time. The film ends.